That is an enormous cost. It's about 50 billion, but it's also very imaginative. As we all know...
What is that? Sorry, imaginative. What do you mean by that?
But it's not the kind of thinking you get from the others, because, because they stick with orthodoxy. One of the big problems we've got is we have more and more people, young people too, living off welfare. And it's costing us over £100 billion a year. What we want to do, and there's a trap here, you see. You're on benefits, you go back to work, you work more than 16 hours a week, the tax kicks in, you may as well stay on benefits. There is a terrible trap.
So hence the rationale to raise the tax threshold.
Absolutely.
Nigel Farage walked into the BBC studio, and from the very first second it was obvious. The presenters had one mission. They weren't there for a friendly conversation. They were there to corner him, rattle him, and make him slip. But here's what they didn't expect. Farage didn't just hold his ground. He took control. Completely. Every question they threw at him, whether it was a trap, a twist, or a calculated attempt to trip him up, he dismantled with calm, precise, and direct answers. No vague political waffle. No rehearsed slogans. Just clear, sharp responses that left the presenters scrambling to keep up. It felt less like an interview and more like a masterclass. If you enjoy political breakdowns like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to NewsX UK. Believe it or not, more than 98% of viewers watch our content.
However, since the pandemic, a growing number of young people are saying they've got all sorts of psychological problems, but they're also not incentivized to go to work. We want to get people back to work.
I understand that. So the 50 billion, where will that money come from?
A lot of it will come from the racket that is going on. The government has been creating money, particularly during the pandemic. That money goes into the system, it goes into banks, the banks lodge it with the Bank of England, the Bank of England pay them interest on it. It's a racket. It's a racket. Well, and an increasing number of economists and academics say that alone could save between 35 and 40 billion pounds a year.
So
I wasn't in charge. If I'd been given responsibility for making Brexit happen, it would have been very different.
But that's an easy get out. That's a bit like where you are now in Reform, where you're saying, I'm not in charge.
In 2019, right, in the general election, I stood aside in over 300 seats to give Boris Johnson a free run, to get Brexit over the line and to deliver the promises that he made. The reason on migration that Brexit has failed in the eyes of many people is because the Conservative Party haven't delivered. But be in no doubt, we are in charge of these things. Brexit gives us self-government. That doesn't guarantee success, but it does mean we're in charge.
And that, we've spoken to the IFS, or taken a look at the IFS, looking at your proposals for changing the Bank of England's function. And that is a very difficult and long process. That is very technical. That would not happen immediately.
Well, no other central bank in the world does this. This is a complete racket with the banks. And interestingly, you know, Paul Tucker, a former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, fully endorses our plan, as do a growing number of economists. But look, I'm going to launch... And by the way, I won't call it a manifesto, because the word association with manifesto is lie. I'm going to launch our contract on Monday, where I'll lay out all of the costings of our plans. All I can tell you is what we're doing is bold and imaginative.
Opinion polls across the UK are beginning to show something genuinely unexpected. The Reform Party's numbers are rising, steadily, visibly, and in some regions, they're even overtaking Labour. This isn't just frustration with the traditional parties. It's a political shift that's catching national attention, with Nigel Farage positioned firmly at the center of it. Farage's message is resonating with voters who feel let down or ignored by the current political establishment. Whether people agree with him or not, the connection is building with a disillusioned electorate is real, and it's growing. For many supporters, Farage's long-term ambition is no longer a distant idea. His direct communication style and famed stances on issues like immigration and political reform are gaining traction in ways the mainstream parties didn't anticipate. To his base, he's becoming a stabilizing voice in what they see as an increasingly chaotic political landscape. And with every interview, rally, and high-profile appearance, the question that once seemed purely hypothetical is now entering serious political discussion. Could Nigel Farage realistically become Prime Minister? If current momentum continues, even partially, the impact on the...
I wasn't in charge. If I'd been given responsibility for making Brexit happen, it would have been very different.
But that's an easy get out. That's a bit like where you are now in Reform, where you're saying, I'm not in charge.
In 2019, right, in the general election, I stood aside in over 300 seats to give Boris Johnson a free run, to get Brexit over the line and to deliver the promises that he made. The reason on migration that Brexit has failed in the eyes of many people is because the Conservative Party haven't delivered. But be in no doubt, we are in charge of these things. Brexit gives us self-government. That doesn't guarantee success, but it does mean we're in charge.
And we've spoken to the IFS, and they've looked closely at your proposal to change the Bank of England's functions. Their conclusion is that this would be a long, technical process, something that couldn't happen quickly. Well, look, no other central bank in the world operates like this. What we have right now is, frankly, a racket that benefits the banks. And interestingly, Paul Tucker, a former deputy governor of the Bank of England, fully supports what we're proposing, as do an increasing number of economists. But here's the key point. On Monday, I'll be launching what I call our contract, not a manifesto, because people hear that word and think lies. In that contract, we'll publish the full costings and details of our plans. What I can say today is simple. What we're offering is bold, it's imaginative, and it's long overdue.
And that we've spoken to the IFS, or taken a look at the IFS, looking at your proposals for changing the Bank of England's function. And that is a very difficult and long process. That is very technical. That would not happen immediately.
Well, no other central bank in the world does this. This is a complete racket with the banks. And interestingly, Paul Tucker, a former deputy governor of the Bank of England, fully endorses our plan, as do a growing number of economists. But look, I'm going to launch. And by the way, I won't call it a manifesto, because the word association with manifesto is lie. I'm going to launch our contract on Monday, where I'll lay out all of the costings of our plans. All I can tell you is what we're doing is bold and imaginative.
When Cathy Newman went head-to-head with Nigel Farage live on air, it was clear she arrived fully armed with research and ready to press him hard. But Farage was just as prepared. From the opening question, he responded with precision, calm, confident, and unwilling to be boxed in. Every attempt to corner him was met with direct, controlled answers that shifted the momentum in his favor. The real turning point came when Newman challenged him on immigration statistics, questioning the accuracy of his claims. Instead of retreating, Farage doubled down. He clarified his sources, reinforced his argument, and held his composure throughout. As the exchange unfolded, her irritation became increasingly visible. But it wasn't only Farage's quick thinking that stood out. It was his composure under pressure, his refusal to be rattled, that ultimately defined the moment. By the end of the interview, one thing was clear. His resilience left...
And you must recognise this, given what you previously said about how few MPs, even you, think you will get relative to the Parliament. It could be a big jump for you as a party, but relative to the Parliament.
Well, we'll see.
It gives you a freedom to say stuff, doesn't it? That you're not going to have to back this up and say we couldn't do it.
What I'm saying is this. We have a Labour Party that's won already. The election is over. We all know that. Your viewers all know that. Their thinking on economics, on all of the key issues of our lives, is actually remarkably similar to the Conservative Party. I'm arguing that for democracy to work, governments need to be challenged. And I think...
Let's talk about immigration. While most politicians dodge the subject or water down the facts, Nigel Farage confronts it directly. He doesn't just highlight the issues. He backs up his arguments with data, setting himself apart in a political landscape where genuine courage is increasingly rare. That willingness to speak plainly is exactly what captures people's attention and inspires confidence among those searching for real leadership. But it's not only his policies that resonate. It's the way he communicates them. Farage speaks with a clarity and sincerity that make his views unmistakable. People may disagree with him, but they never have to guess where he stands. And that honesty, rare in modern politics, is a major reason he has become a trusted figure for voters exhausted by empty promises from the traditional parties. To his supporters, Farage isn't just another politician. He's someone who understands their frustrations and genuinely wants to fix what's broken. That's why he draws support from across the spectrum, from lifelong conservatives to disillusioned Labour voters. His ability to connect, to listen, and to speak in the language of ordinary people is what makes him, in their eyes, a real voice of the public.
A far better position to do that than either Ed Davey from the Lib Dems Rishi Sunak won't be there, but the Tories are so divided, they don't stand for anything. This is about, I mean, look, we are completely in the grip of big corporate businesses. That's who the politicians listen to. I know that from 20 years in the European Parliament. There are 5.5 million people out there, men and women, running small businesses, acting as sole traders, that frankly are having the most difficult time. I'm on their side and I'll fight for them.
Farage doesn't just offer proposals. He lays out a compelling vision. And for a country desperate for change, his message is becoming harder and harder to ignore. In his BBC interview, Nigel Farage spoke with striking boldness, unafraid to confront the issues people worry about most. He cited statistics that made the audience go silent, pointing out each moment a migrant crossed the UK border. It was a wake-up call for Munn, who quickly accused Farage of exaggeration or even outright dishonesty. Yet, true to form, Farage stayed unfazed, refusing to buckle under scrutiny. He confidently restated his position, backing it with government data and reports that strengthened his argument. This wasn't just a fiery exchange. It was a genuine clash of perspectives, charged with tension and emotion. Farage framed the situation as a pressing national crisis, while Munn challenged the reliability of the figures and questioned his motives. Their confrontation made one thing unmistakably clear. These issues matter deeply to the public, and people care passionately about how they are addressed.
The front page of the Reform website, as it stands, and I know it's not a manifesto at this stage, I'm not quite sure, do you call it a pledge? I can't remember.
No, a contract.
A contract.
This is what we will campaign
The contract, it says you'll set out your reforms in the first 100 days, is what it says. And you then go to say it's produced with advice from independent economists, think tanks and advisors. And a moment ago you said you're not about conformity. That just sounds like everybody else. Every other political party would say, we talk to independent advisors, we talk to think tanks. You just sound like everyone else.
I've been called many things over the years, but not like everybody else.
Well, no, I'm quoting from from Reform. That's what you said. It doesn't sound radical. That just sounds like you do the same as other people. You talk to think tanks.
I've just outlined some very radical proposals. Equally, we don't think anybody should pay inheritance tax until the estate is worth £2 million. We want to lift the VAT threshold to help small businesses. I promise you, what's coming on Monday is very, very different.
The audience couldn't help noticing the sudden shift in atmosphere. What started as a routine exchange quickly transformed into a masterclass in handling pressure. Farage didn't just answer questions. He seized total control of the conversation. Within moments, the dynamic flipped entirely. Munn appeared visibly unsettled while viewers watched in disbelief. This wasn't just another interview. It was a defining moment, one that showcased exactly why Farage's popularity continues to surge. He doesn't simply defend his views. He dominates the discussion, and that dominance forces people to seriously consider his potential as a national leader. Farage possesses a rare quality that sets him apart from most politicians. He speaks plainly and directly, without padding, without spin, without the usual Westminster theatrics. He doesn't sugarcoat problems or retreat into jargon. Whether he's talking about immigration, national security, or economic reform, his focus remains fixed on what he believes Britain genuinely needs. It's that blend of authenticity, clarity, and determination that earns him admiration, and why his voice has become impossible to ignore.